Greetings and salutations. I want to welcome everyone to another rendition of A Design for Living Big Book Study with Nadja and Bill. As you know, Nadja had an opportunity to work a job where her daughter's in school finishing up. So we have some illustrious hostesses that fill, and they go around the country. They're like if you worked at a bank or a store where someone has time off, they're floaters, they call. Well, we got floating DC today. We have left off at page 82 in the book. Give a rendition. We've gone through all the problems and the complications of the drinking. We've gotten sober. Now we're trying to clear away the wreckage of our past. In particular, uh, last couple sessions we had, these guys got mixed up with people. Not only were they drunks, they were infidels. We took care of them. We left them on that page. If they didn't get killed at this point or divorced, they got a shot. So here we go. Page 82. If we have no such complication, that would be the infidelity, the X stuff, so on and so forth, there is plenty we should do at home. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic say that the only thing he needs to do is keep sober. Certainly he must keep sober, for there will be no home if he doesn't. But he is yet a long way from making good to the wife or parents whom for years he has so shockingly treated. Passing all understanding is the patience mothers and wives have had with alcoholics. Had this not been so, many of us would have had no homes today, would perhaps be dead. So interestingly enough, you wonder with what you hear in the rooms when people talk about just not drinking, Rob, and 6 years later they want to kill themselves because they're going crazy. I don't know how they could tell the other people, look, I'm not drinking, you should be happy about that. How could they stand themselves? I know that they're trying to get someone to go along with them and co-sign their nonsense, but he's really made clear this kind of shifts gears, because he's made clear that an alcoholic untreated will die or go permanently insane, and it doesn't always mean while drinking. So you got anything on that, DC?
No, let's keep going.
Well, there you go. The floater has floated away. Okay. Just continues. The alcoholic is like a tornado, roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken. Sweet relationships are dead. Affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. We feel a man is unthinking when he said that sobriety is enough. He is like the farmer who came out of the cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife, he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing?" Yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. We must take the lead. A remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fill the bill at all. We ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it, being very careful not to criticize them. Their defects may be clearing, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. So we clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. Go ahead, if you would like to say something. I want to look something up real quick from chapter 2.
Yeah, absolutely, Bill. As we read those first couple paragraphs and the one that you just read, I was reminded back in There's a Solution when it tells us if you're seriously as alcoholic as we are, we believe there's no middle of the road solution. Middle of the road is sobriety that includes not drinking only. Middle of the road sobriety is sobriety that includes just meeting and not working the steps. There is no middle of the road solution if we want to stay sober and live a life that has purpose, where we can be, happily and usefully whole. It says, we had to have we had to be willing to accept spiritual help. And that was touched on in this last sentence that you just read, Bill, right? We clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation, inviting God to be a part of our lives, inviting God to be a part of our sobriety, inviting God to be a part of the solution, we ask in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. Because on my own, living on a life that doesn't involve any kind of spiritual guidance, I'm taking your inventory. I'm judging you. I'm irritated by you. I'm stepping on your toes. You're retaliating, and I'm pissed off about it. And we get the tools for living that exist in this program by inviting God to be a part of the solution, by no longer running our lives on self-will, by no longer living a life that includes middle of the road solution. Come all the way in, sit all the way down, invite God to be a part of the solution. It's a lot better if you do. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, and he's going to reiterate that when we get to step 11.
Yep.
Ask your wife or friends to join you in your morning meditation. So I wanted to go back to when it was talking about the damage that was done, if we remember, and it's really funny that we both went to the same chapter but different places. Page 18, an illness of this sort, and we have come to believe it an illness, involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can. If a person has cancer, all are sorry for him and no one is angry or hurt. But not so with the alcoholic illness, for with it there goes annihilation of all things worthwhile in life. It engulfs all whose lives touch the sufferers. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, sad wives and parents. Anyone can increase the list. He's almost toned it down here in the 9th step. Wouldn't you say that, Judy? He's not so stringent about the damage done. He's saying, hey, you guys have done some stuff here. But I think what happens if they're restored or reunited in their home front, we don't have to unearth that, because they're talking to alcoholics that you're trying to get sober. These guys are sober now, taking this program of recovery. So maybe we don't want to beat them up with the damage they did anymore. We'll let their sponsors do that. Okay. So the spiritual life is not a theory. Well, let's hold on one second. So again, this is the amend process. Isn't it interesting that here's when we go to our rivals, when we go to acquaintances, when we go to people we've screwed over or owed money to, it says their faults are not to be discussed. But this here is a different situation because we're living with these people. If the family has been kind enough to stay with us, we know from Al-Anon family groups, Al-Anon, Al-Teen, Al-Pet, ACA, people get real sick living with alcoholics. And all of a sudden, I have this monumental, it's this experience after I've taken step 5. I know God from the bottom of my heart. I thank him and all that good stuff. And now I'm coming home to tell mama who's put up with my abuse and my beating and my drunkenness and hurting the kids and scaring them and wetting the bed. And all of a sudden, I want to sit down. And if she gets smart in the mouth, I'm going to say, well, listen, you did this. They're saying, guess what? Not at all, zero tolerance for that. Their defects may be glaring. But I'm making amends because I might have helped aggravate those things. That probably wasn't the gal that we married or the spouse, the male that the women married when they're making these amends. They've destroyed a marriage and go along annihilation because alcohol is progressive. So they don't get discussed either. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not to urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. You know what? Let me read one more paragraph and we'll close out the amend portion until we get those so loved and prophesied promises we hear at every meeting. The newcomer knows when to chime in there, right? We think not. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. And there may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. So this first line, it almost has like a triplicate meaning to me. And sometimes I read it and I get different things out of it. The spiritual life is not a theory. Which means, number one, I can't theorize about it. I have to live it. Number two, it can't be theoretical in my mind. It needs to be lived. I mean, more than I have to live it for my survival, it needs to be lived. And then, of course, I can't profess it to new guys that I'm sponsoring, trying to sell them something I'm not doing because they ain't going to buy it. It can't be theoretical. I have to live it or my whole life is out of order. And guess what? Some of us think we're running around in the land of milk and honey, that we've been rocketed and catapulted, and we haven't left the ground yet. We stopped drinking and our lives got a little better. We admitted some of our faults, like it says in the 12 and 12, you know, that drinking is only a good man's fault. And besides that, we were just we were good actors till we drank. Now that I'm not drinking, things better shape up around here. I've seen alcoholics destroy marriages sober when they didn't have to because they did not treat the spiritual condition that exists within. Um, I think when it's talking about some rights we can never fully rate, people can't be seen. Some people have restraining orders. I know there were a lot of people that I don't have to make amends to because they don't want me around, and the judge said that. But nonetheless, it's probably people that have died. It's probably people that have moved away or I can't get to. And sometimes God gets to be the postman. Sometimes I put a letter in the mailbox where I didn't know where the person was. I put a stamp on it, put their name on it, and let God get it where it had to go. I'm trying to get some peace here. And I'm trying to put my life in order, as it says here, but also trying to relieve them. We talked about the ripple effect last week that our behavior has. I had taken some money once, and a guy had been punishing and hating the wrong guy for 6 months. He said, "Oh my God, now I owe amends. I've been blaming and hating the wrong guy." My behavior, because he didn't know I did it, but he knew it was done, and he'd been blaming the wrong person. We can set a lot of people free with this step.
You know, Bill, as we're reading through this, I was reminded that first paragraph that you were reading. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. We must remember 10 or 20 years out of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. When I first got sober, my daughter was 10 years old at the time, and after I got sober, she would follow me around the house. And if I was drinking out of a cup or a glass or a mug, she was constantly looking over my shoulder, and I would get so irritated with her. I'm sober. What do you want? What are you doing? Why are you, up in my business? And I was offended. And I had to remember that these reparations take time, right? It takes time for people to begin to trust us again because it's our actions, it's our behaviors that change, not our claim to being sober. Because I claimed to be sober a million times. I claimed that this time was the time that I was going to stay sober. It's no wonder people didn't trust me, right? But here's the thing, the action also comes from making the amends, from going to people, from making these reparations, from owning our responsibility, for acknowledging the harm that we have done others. That is a big part of taking actions, is honoring somebody else's experience as a result of our drunkenness. And we get to do that through making amends. And we should be tactful, considerate, and humble, right? We're not there to be in self-righteous anger, to justify our behavior, to make excuses as to why we drank or why we acted. And if you would have only, then maybe I wouldn't, right? It's not about the other person. It's not about what they did. This is about what we've done. This is about cleaning up our side of the street so we can get in alignment with our higher power. And as God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. There are going to be people that are skeptical. There are going to be people that second guess our intentions, the longevity, our commitment. But as God's people, we stand on our feet and we don't crawl before anybody. We keep putting one foot in front of the other, even when it feels like it's a fruitless journey, even when it feels like people don't believe us, even when it feels like there's never a wrong reason to do the right thing. So we just keep on trudging. That's all I've got, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you. That was deep right there. I mean, you took it to a level that I wasn't expecting. Not that that's good or bad. And I like it. So, as God's people, and what does that mean? It means in step 3, there's an invitation that's taking place. As we discovered, I thought I was inviting God into my life. What he was doing was inviting me to open the door because he was already there. So the invitation takes place. And what I find out is that the great reality had been deep within me the whole time. Since I'm clearing that channel and getting that connection, now when I'm going to face someone, guess what? I'm not going alone. There have been times when I would get sober and go make amends to relieve myself of the guilt, to get back in the big bed, to see how much trouble I was going to be in if I went further with the amends, or to see who was looking for me. That was not the spirit of step 9. I remember holding my hands out in front of a highway patrolman who had active warrants for my arrest, who I left hanging out of a car and fleeing and eluding with a DUI and a possession. And I said, you know what? He happened to be a Christian. And and I mean, this guy was a follower of God. And I'm over there being a sober member of AA, and he asked me what I'm doing at this particular place that we ran into each other, why this process was going on. And I told him I got sober and I'm trying to get right with God. It was a Christian concert. He started telling me about his relationship with God. And when he walked back inside, all of a sudden something came over me. I called him back out. I said, Officer, I won't say his name because we're on tape, but he was a Florida Highway Patrol, Rob, believe that. I said, can I talk to you for a minute? He came outside. I put my hands on it. I said, take me to jail. He said, what are you talking about? Put your hands down. I said, when you talk about God, you got fire coming out of your eyes. I'm talking about God, and I'm looking down on the ground. I'm not going to look down no more. And that's where that thing came to fruition about the guy who had done a wrong that he thought he could never make right, but he was willing to do anything rather than stand before his creator guilty of such ruinous slander. That was my experience. The guy told me, he said, the God of my understanding told me not to follow up on that. And this was beforehand. He said, your testimony will bear more witness than 5 years in the penitentiary. Let's move on now. So what I have to realize is if I'm trusting God and he's with me, sometimes he makes a way where there doesn't seem to be one. Now, if I'm a threat to people and I've done some damage, God's probably not so prevalent. He's there, but you can't see him because I live a certain way. And like we shared yesterday at a meeting, I said, I can't believe they're punishing me for being sick. He said, they're not punishing you for being sick. You're in the Department of Corrections, and something about your life needs correction. And there's a difference between repentance and correction. Because if I say I'm willing to pay the price and I know I'm wrong and I don't want to be wrong and I don't want you to be hurt no more, if forgiveness comes, I have to look at that as a spiritual principle that God handles. If someone says, guess what? You did it wrong, that there needs to be paid a price for, and unfortunately it can't be financial. It's going to be with time out of your life, go in time out. But a guy like you's been used to it because you've been in time out all your life, Bill Swan. They were preparing you for the penitentiary when you were in the crib. Okay, anything else, DC, on that? Well, I'm going to have you, DC, would you like to read the promises for us today, please?
Absolutely. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed where we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. You know, I remember I was sitting up in a Zoom meeting probably 6 months ago, and all of a sudden it struck me that each and every one of these promises had come true in my life. And I didn't see them coming true as they were coming true. It wasn't like all of a sudden, oh, okay, well, now I have the new freedom and the new happiness. Oh, you know what? I suddenly feel like self-seeking has slipped away. It's this gradual process that slowly evolves as we transcend, as we go through this process. You know, and the fact that I think I love to ask people what their favorite ninth step promise is. I'm always amazed by the answers because it speaks volumes as to what some of our biggest struggles were before we got sober. And for me, that intuitively knowing how to handle situations which used to baffle us. Because I'm one of those alcoholics that I came in the room and I'll figure it out, and my figuring it out always got me in more trouble. And what doing the work, what coming in, what having a relationship with a higher power has done for me is tells me that I don't have to be in charge, right? I do the work. I'm responsible for the action, and God's responsible for the results. And these nine-step problems, these nine-step promises, these have been the results, right? Seeing how our experience can benefit others. When I first came in here, if you would have told me that somehow my pain, all of my chaos, all the damage I did, that was going to enable me to be helpful and useful to another alcoholic, to another non-alcoholic at some time in the future, I would have told you you're crazy. But again and again and again, I get phone calls from other alcoholics and from my sponsees. They call me with my problems disguised as theirs. And I get to help them. I get to support them. I get to redirect them to different prayers in the book, back to, whatever it is that they need to do. Are there amends that are left undone? Where are you at with your step work, right? I get to help them see things through a different lens because God doesn't waste pain. My experience has put me in a position to be useful and helpful to other people. Thank God for that. That's how this program works. One alcoholic carrying a message to another alcoholic. That's what we get to do. Come on in, Bill.
Thank you, DC. Yeah, and I put one of my pet peeves out there. Sometimes we do the newcomer a disservice when we do the AA chant. Are these extravagant promises? And then people that have been here for a while say, we think not, because that's what it says in the book. Well, let's take a look for, and then we get the newcomer to say it. But then we say, if you're painstaking about this, why would I be painstaking if you don't give me anything extravagant? However, when I look at these things individual, we'll be amazed. When's the last time you were amazed? When's the last time you beheld something that amazed you? How about a new freedom and a new happiness? If you gave me a new car, I didn't have it before I got it. That's new. A new freedom. I had no freedom all my life. I've been in bondage. I know a lot of us talk about it. I'm starting to believe maybe there were more of me out there. I just didn't see them. It wasn't as obvious. But a new freedom and a new happiness, when you've been lonely and desolate and desperate all your life and drive people out of your life without even trying, because your personality is so warped by the way you lived and the demons that are screaming inside, and all of a sudden I get free from that. I won't regret the past or wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, which many of us never even knew what the hell it was. We couldn't spell it, let alone feel it, experience, or comprehend it. Doing our big study, Kevin's here. Okay, so on and so forth. So you get the point. They are extravagant promises, but guess what? So is a new power, peace, and happiness flowing into me at step 2 before I even utter the 3rd step prayer. Wait till we get to the 10th step promises if you think these are real good. This thought, you did read that last little filler paragraph, right? Are these extravagant? You didn't? You didn't read Are these extravagant promises? Oh, what the hell? I'm talking out of suit. Go ahead and then we'll just rewind the tape.
Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. That's one of the most powerful words in this big book. If we work for them, if you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, because it tells me that there's a reward on the other side if I'm willing to do what precedes the if in any sentence. All right, Bill.
All right, here we go. This is my favorite. I think my favorite, at least right now. I mean, David went over this. You guys remember my good friend David down in Florida. We used to call him 84 through 88 and all of chapter 7. It was a 10, 11, and 12 bobblehead doll we made for him. But he knew that this was the daily practice. This was the discipline. This is where the reprieve came and stayed. This thought. And what's the thought? I was thinking about that today, DC. Was it we thought well before taking the step back at step 3, or was it we think not? I guess you can use your imagination, but they don't address it. What the hell thought are they talking about here? This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously, now listen to the magic of this word right here. That's a powerful word, vigorously. I've just gone through a vigorous 4th step. They use that word there too. I've bore my soul to another human being, told things that I swear I wasn't going to tell Jesus, even though I know he saw it. And all of a sudden, I'm over there making amends. And now you tell me once I get that out of the way, I'm going to be vigorous in my continuing to watch for the things that I discovered in step 4 had built up over the years and blocked me from the power. Why? Because I don't want the pipe to get filthy again. And guess what? It might not even be as clean as I think it is right now. A business which takes no regular inventory goes broke. So we're doing this commence this rigorous way of living as we cleaned up the past, which means as soon as I start making amends, I'm going to continue to watch for and here's what it says to do about it. But I think this is my favorite promise that they don't read. is that we have entered the world of the spirit. I think that's powerful. I think that's more powerful than a new freedom and a new happiness. I might see God there, like Beth Gordon said before she passed. I might even hear the sun come up one day. Oh my God, could you imagine hearing the sun come up? But the reality is, this is a realm that we're not in. And if I'm entering it, it means I wasn't there before I entered it. And I believe that this is what they refer to in step 12, past tense, having had a spiritual awakening. I believe that this is where the awakening takes place. And then in step 11, I improve on the awakening. And in step 12, having had it happen in the past, I try and give it away and practice these principles or keep it moving. So we have entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. I believe it's understanding of that realm and effectiveness in this one, understanding in the world of the spirit, what I do and how I carry it out here in this world where I live with you guys. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear when they crop up, not if, but they're coming. Now, listen to this, DC. The other day, it dawned on me. You're not watching for them when they come up. Watch for, I looked it up the other day. I think I got to look it up again, but it means to be in anticipation. More, we looked it up. What the hell did it say the other day? To anticipate them. Anticipate selfishness, not that they're going to happen, because that's what we tell each other. Oh, well, you're human, so it's going to happen. The watch for in here, we looked up the description of those two words together, and it means to be prepared because they're coming, to be on guard, to anticipate selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear. And then when they crop up, here's what we do about them. We ask God to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately. We make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. And then with a firm resolution, we turn our thoughts to someone we can help. That doesn't always mean there's going to be someone there to help, but we turn our thoughts away from ourselves towards someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. Isn't that interesting that they don't give you the code till step 10, Judy? You think they give it to you at your first meeting. The code back then is shut up and get in the car. Go sit in the front row. You don't know anything. So I'll say this, and I'm going to give it over to DC. It uses the word continue 4 times. Continue, it's an operative verb. Continue, continue, continue. Keep moving, because we're going to find out on the next page. If you don't, guess what? It's easy to do. Come on.
It's probably a year ago, I was spinning on some stuff, and I called another alcoholic to discuss it with her, and she asked me, she said, how's your step 10? Have you done step 10 on this? And so we pulled out the book and we started to read it. And we got to this point where they give us directions, right? Because they give us directions in this part. They tell you to continue to watch. That's taking action, right? When these things crop up, we ask God to remove them. We discuss. Like, there's all these directions that they give us that are attached to this step. And when I read step 10 before, this part of it, I heard, continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, and resentment when these things crop up. I completely overlooked the fact that fear is included. And for me, fear is a big driver of defects. Fear is a big driver of bad behavior. Fear is a big, big driver of me drifting into a state of agnosticism in the program with a God of my understanding. I can still get to that part of agnosticism because I am not trusting and relying implicitly upon my higher power. And so when it tells me to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, that crops up all the time. I got an eye on that. I love that perspective, Bill, that you gave of like being able to anticipate. And it says when these crop up, not if these crop up, because these things are going to happen every single day. Every single day, one of these things are going to crop up, right? But here's the thing. We have a solution here. We ask God at once to remove them. When I find myself in that position, I ask God, I say, literally, I'll be sitting here and I'm like, you got to take this. You got to take this because I can't remove this on my own. I have to have divine help. And so once again, I'm encouraged to invite God to be a part of the solution. I ask God at once to remove them. And then I discuss them with someone immediately. Why? Why do I need to discuss them with somebody immediately? Because in my own head, I can justify, I can rationalize, I can make excuses. I can tell myself that my resentment towards you is deserved because of that thing that you did to me. I can justify my fear because who wouldn't be afraid if they were going through something like this? But by having a conversation with somebody else on these things, we get a different perspective. And here's the thing that I have to remember. God often puts people in my path to carry a message when I cannot hear it from God himself. Um, we make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. You know, step 10 is it's this beautiful like a combination of steps 4 through 9. We get an opportunity to look at where we were wrong. We make amends quickly. We resolutely turn our help to someone we resolutely turn our attention, our thoughts to someone we can help. Well, what does that mean? Bill, you were saying like there may not always be somebody in your path that you can help. But guess what? Sometimes just picking up the phone, sometimes shooting a text to somebody that just crossed your mind, they might need a little support. They might need somebody to check in on them. Maybe I take just a few minutes and think about people in my life that I know are struggling or going through a hard time. And I hold space in prayer and meditation just for a moment to send some love and prayer up to them in the universe. Doesn't necessarily say that we need to get in action and start reading the book with somebody. It says we turn our thoughts to someone that we can help. And I think when we're open minded to that, all of a sudden that person that crosses your mind might just need your help. Back to you, Bill.
Yes, indeed. And I always used to assume that when they cropped up, in other words, when they happened, that's when I took action. That's why that stuck out so, just became so apparent to me. If I'm watching for it before it happens, and as soon as it happens, I take care of it. I don't wait till it happens, and that's the when. That's ex post facto. That's after the fact. So it's just pretty amazing. And like you said, then it actually not only does it include 4 from 9, doesn't it throw 12 in there if I'm getting out of myself to help someone? And a gal said one day, you might help no one, but you're turning your thoughts to someone else, because when we turn our thoughts to ourselves, that's where selfishness comes from. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. And that that can go two ways to temptation. And I always look at it like, oh my God, I was tempted to take a drink and I escaped disaster. Temptation is it could cross my mind and I'm going to react sanely and normally and say, wait a minute, you don't put your hand on a hot stove anymore. You don't stick metal screwdrivers in a light socket, and you don't drink alcohol, because all three of those have disastrous results for you. The other temptation is this. DC's at a wedding and she comes over and I say, DC, would you like a drink? That's a temptation. It doesn't mean she was tempted, but it's a temptation because it's offered to you, right? I've just tempted you with something. DC, would you like chocolate? No, I'm on a diet, but that was a temptation. It didn't mean to be. Correct? So in other words, it can go more than just one way. The other thing is it says we react sanely and normally. One of my sponsors here in Cleveland talked about when he was newly sober, hadn't taken the steps yet, so he was restless, irritable, discontent. He had an operation on his leg, and he had to be in one of those things that you move around with, almost like a wheelchair when you went to Walmart shopping. And he went to the local Giant Eagle store, and he said they had put his favorite beer in a big right in front of him. I mean, stacks and cases of it. He said he ran his cart to it and knocked them all over. That is not a sane reaction to temptation or the like, but he did it. And we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. I'll say one thing about this because I think I've said enough. So these are the 10-step promises. But they used to say, and this was years ago, don't leave before the miracle happens. Well, I figured Sunday was a good day for the miracle to happen. Seems like everyone goes to visit God on that day. The problem is on Thursday, I'd be so angst up and start to get thirsty. Friday, I couldn't take it no more. Saturday, I pick up a drink and I drank right through the miracle. This is where the miracle happens in step 10. It happens on Sunday only if I'm on step 10 at that day, but it's not something that happens, it's time specific. It's work specific or me going through it, the process. And I'll say this, step 2 came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. This is the evidence or the manifestation of step 2. Step 2 is a theory. Until it happens, it's a theory, but it's a good theory. Come on, DC.
I appreciate that tie back to step 2, Bill, because I was reflecting just recently on my step 2 experience. And when I was on step 2, I remember reading the words, right? Came to believe, and all the rest of the words on the pages disappeared like disappearing from the pages of the big book. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And I sat in reflection just recently and I realized why I had such a hard time, because my thought was, okay, I believe. So now we move on to step 3, right? And there's so much more to that in step 10. Being restored to sanity. It's no wonder I couldn't wrap my head around being restored to sanity, because what did sane living look like? What did sanity look like? My alcoholic life had become the only normal one. So how was I supposed to be able to conceptualize that I could be restored to a state of existence that I couldn't imagine, that I couldn't relate to? And I remember I'd sit in meetings in early sobriety, and every once in a while, somebody would read the 10-step promises. And I saw what Angela put in the chat. I want the 10-step promises. And I remember I would sit in meetings early in sobriety and think, I just want to be in that position of neutrality. I just want to be able to walk past the liquor aisle in the grocery store and not want to run out of the store screaming and ripping all my hair out. I want to be able to be at that peace and ease, be in that position of neutrality, feeling safe and protected. That feeling of safety and protection comes from a higher power, comes from that power greater than ourselves, right? From having faith in that thing that we cannot see and we cannot explain, because that's a relationship with God. Cannot be explained, it can only be experienced. By the time we get here, by the time we've gone through the steps, by the time we've made our amends, we get to step 10. And all of a sudden, like it says here, has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. It's another one of these parts of the process that there's not a check, there's not an event, there's not something. All of a sudden we realize we are in this position of neutrality. We're not fighting it, and we're not avoiding temptation. We're safe and protected because we've made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. And it's through doing the work and staying in constant contact with our higher power that we get placed in that position of neutrality and of safety. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. Well, simple but not easy. It said at the beginning of the book. Well, guess what? They're going to tell you there's one set thing that's very easy in this program, and here's what it is. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent upon the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. I'm going to read this last paragraph and we're going to stop there for today. We were pushing it to the limit every day and no one had time to talk. That was crazy. It's not like we're trying to get anywhere quick. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further, and that means more action. Let me talk about this one first before I go back, because I don't want to miss something here. We're developing this vital sixth sense. Vital means necessary for life. I don't know about anyone else here, but I suspect we're all the same. I've been going through this round with my five senses. Depending on how I like someone based on how they look, whether I want to sit with them based on how they smell, right? Touch, taste, sight, sound, and hearing. Well, those have dominated me, but I shop for a girlfriend the same way I shop for a motorcycle. I want something colorful that's going to draw some loud attention to me. That's not necessarily in my best interest. It hasn't been because all my friends want to get with them when I'm at work. You know what I mean? But the point is, if I'm developing this vital sixth sense, I'm fueling the spirit, and then my senses don't dominate me. I'm not being guided or driven by my instincts, which we discovered at step 4 were way out of joint. And then when it says we must go much further, I believe they're talking about into the world of the spirit, because it doesn't say farther as in distance. It says further, and that's relating to a different plane, a different space, beyond time, matter, and material. And then lastly, David Ripley, each day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. It's going to tell us when next week we're going to find out how to get a vision of God's will to carry out into all of our activities. I think I'm good for right now, DC, on step 10 and the conclusion of step 9, if you want to say anything, and then the crew can do what they're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Bill. I had a sponsee who called me yesterday, and she was spinning out on a bunch of stuff, right? And what was going on was that she was unhappy at the way that life was unfolding. And I was reminded of that, of the story of the actor, right? I need for everybody to play the roles that I've assigned so I can be okay. And so we had some constructive conversations, and we did some redirects, and she sat in prayer and meditation. She went to yoga, she found gratitude, and she ended her day feeling really, really okay and at peace with everything. So this morning I wake up and she says, everything that I did yesterday is gone. I'm just as fucking crazy, excuse me, I'm just as crazy as I was yesterday. Right. And what I reminded her of is this, like, resting on our laurels means resting on our prior achievements, resting on our prior efforts. I said, baby, we get our days straightened out. But when the clock strikes midnight, our head hits our pillow and we wake up the next day, it's a whole new day. You get to start all over again, right? Because we can't expect that spiritual solution that we found in our efforts from yesterday, our laurels of yesterday, is going to carry us through today. It's a spiritual program of action, right? A daily reprieve, one day at a time, contingent on the daily maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. You guys, I have an alarm set on my phone right now that goes off every 2 hours. It says, thy will be done. Because I need that reminder constantly. And when that reminder goes off, I take a pause, I take a breath, and I say that to myself. Because if I don't have that constant reminder, I'm wondering why the world isn't behaving the way that I need it to behave. I'm trying to rest on the efforts that I did yesterday. I have a relationship with God. Isn't that enough? Why do I have to engage in this daily prayer and meditation? Why do I have to have constant thought of others? Why do I need to why do I need to do all these things? It's a daily reprieve that requires maintenance. And the last thing I'm going to say is that last paragraph that you read. Once again, we see that magical word if pop up on that, right? If we have carefully followed directions. Bill and I just talked like at length of what the directions are for step 10. Continue to watch, ask God to remove, discuss with another person, make amends. Those are the instructions. If we have carefully followed directions, we've begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. And that sixth sense that many describe as intuition, all of a sudden we're at peace and ease. We're able to find some God consciousness, intuition, whatever you want to call it, that becomes more of a guiding force. I think that's all I've got today, Bill. Thanks for letting me come hang out with you guys.
You. And one more thing, like I tell, you'll tell where you're at any time throughout the day. I will find myself on 1 of 4 pages in this book, either 60 through 63 or 85 through 88. And isn't it interesting that how can I best serve thee? Thy will be done. These are thoughts because I'm thinking of myself all the time. That's why they got to go with me constantly. And before I make that third step decision, all I'm thinking about is myself, how I can get what I want, how you can give me what I want, what I got to do to get it, what I got to do if I don't get it. Holy moly, I produce confusion. I'm in collision. And over here, guess what? Intuition and inspiration. I sense the flow of His Spirit into me. And I'll tell you this, and I'll make this statement for the record. The natural always follows the supernatural. So when we clear the channel, isn't that interesting that your phone no longer needs to be plugged into the wall? In fact, you can take the phone with you anywhere you want, and it's connected to something that you can't see. That's kind of like taking these steps. We clear a channel. You might not be able to see the connection, but you know darn well it's there because you feel power, peace, and happiness flowing in. And there, oh, one more thing, and then I'm really done. Daily reprieve. Definition of a reprieve, at least the way the governor sees it. It's a suspension of a death sentence. So that's really what it is. It's deadly. And I will say this, and this is my opinion, Rob. You can stop the recording if you want, or leave this on there for the other people that need to hear it. Yeah, let's leave it on for a minute. Running around AA and saying I'm a recovered alcoholic as if I'm some kind of alcoholic other than you, sometimes it's kind of boasting because I found it in the book. But the reality is, the definition of the recovered alcoholic that they forget is given to us in chapter 2. And here's what it says: nearly all have recovered. They have solved the drink problem. Big deal. Every time I got arrested, the drink problem was solved. But guess what? My alcoholism wasn't relieved. That's enough for today for me, Rob, on the 13th of January. They might think it's Friday the 13th when they hear this recording.